And look, the elephant in the room, I mean, the Charlie Kirk effect is real. There is no question that it has galvanized a huge chunk of this generation. I mean, people are like, there'll never be another Charlie Kirk. I totally disagree with that. And he was always looking for the Elishas to pass that mantle to. When your work is done, the next generation will be, quote, fired by your example and then exemplify your virtues. That's what happened with Charlie Kirk.
Ready to roll?
Yep.
All right.
Real Texan.
Why should this matter to real Texans? Welcome to this edition of Real Texans. Not in my usual studio. Instead, I am south of Fredericksburg, north of Comfort, in what will soon be Constitution City. For the moment, we are in a special legislative chamber of Patriot Academy. I'm sitting with my friend Rick Green, founder of Patriot Academy. You've done a lot of things. Maybe we'll talk about being a state legislator, maybe not, I really want to talk about Patriot Academy.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a long time, trying to help young men, young women understand their government, understand their role as citizens in government. This is a huge escalation of what you...
It's a great way to say it.
Of what you started off, this silly little program when you were a legislator of helping kids understand the government process. Why is Patriot Academy important?
What's my elevator pitch, man? Here we go. I think it's the fact that we've lost the depth of understanding what it really means to be an American and why it's worth fighting for.
Yeah.
And so Patriot Academy's goal is to restore that. We can't do it with everyone, but we can train the tip of the spear. We can train what I call the Navy SEALs of civics. We can take those future leaders and give them that foundation so that whatever they go into, business, politics, ministry, whatever their calling is, that they'll be good citizens when they go there, and they'll understand how important it is to dedicate a part of their life, a part of their fortune, a part of their sacred honor to actually preserving these things. So if they're in business, that they'll fund and support good candidates, support kids that are learning these things. If they go into politics, that they won't be swallowed up by the swamp, that we can actually equip them to be effective in that arena without becoming a part of the problem, which we've both seen so many times with good people that go into the swamp and just get swallowed up by it. So it's important for right now, but it's also important for 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
When you started Patriot Academy, you're much more ecumenical than I am. I look at the world as Texas and not Texas. And when you started Patriot, it really was a Texas thing.
That's right.
You're talking about Texans. Today, you're bringing in young, and again, when you kind of started going outside the borders of Texas, you were literally going outside of the borders of Texas and other places. Today, you're bringing in lots of kids into this program. Talk to me about the hunger and the thirst that you see out there among young men, young women for this kind of training.
I saw it in two ways. One, I got talked into going into another state. I was like, no, everybody's got to come to the Mecca of freedom. You got to come to Texas and do Patriot Academy here. And some friends of mine up in Idaho actually said, we really want you to bring one to the Idaho Capitol and make it kind of your Northwest beachhead for, doing the same thing you're doing in Texas. And so we did that. And then we did Arizona, and then it was, Delaware and Florida and Indiana. It kind of spread. And I saw it in the kids that were coming to the program, that hunger that you're talking about, but also because of our Constitution Coach program, I found that people were more hungry to learn the secret sauce that made America great in the blue cities, in the blue areas, than even in the red areas. They were facing the pain. They were living the pain of bad policies. So they were more hungry to say, there's got to be a better way. What are we missing? So I saw classes exploding in Seattle and Portland and Los Angeles, places I would have never thought we would be going, right? So it made me realize there's patriots in every community across the country that have watched their nation crumble, and they want to pick up the pieces and rebuild. And that was part of why we created that national focus, not just Texas. But then when we got to campus, it became, okay, it's much easier to bring them here and train them, give them a taste of this, and then send them back to start brush fires of liberty around the country.
Now, your background, as I mentioned, you're a former state legislator, but yet you also kind of coinciding with being a state legislator and being and doing Patriot Academy. You also work with wall builders, where talking about kind of the roots of our system of self governance, talking about our nation's founding and those values and principles. How do those things layer into what you do every day with the young men and young women who come through Patriot Academy?
Yeah, if we're gonna rebuild the walls, as Nehemiah says, arise and rebuild the walls, we may no longer be a reproach. If we're gonna rebuild liberty in this country, we have to have the right foundation. We have to know what the right bricks are to build with, and that's what Wall Builders does. That's what they've done from the beginning, is teach what's that true secret sauce. Not just what did the founders do in terms of their policy, what were they reading, what were they studying in order to create that kind of foundation. It's funny, somebody asked me the other day at a town hall, well, how close are you to this David Barton guy? And they were real disparaging about David, and I was like, as close as I could possibly be. The man is, I've been learning at his feet for 25 years, and he's the most Christ-like man I've ever known, and they wanted me to run from him. I was like, no, he's he's the example of what we should be doing. So, Wall Builders had such a huge impact. And honestly, David and Cheryl really helped me start Patriot Academy. Even back 25 years ago when I was in the legislature, if it hadn't been for them, we would have never got this thing off the ground in the first place. So I still host David's radio program. We still do a lot of the Constitution training together. And David and Tim both come and teach here all the time. So we're thrilled to be almost like sister organizations.
Okay, we keep talking about here.
Yes.
I made this reference to where we are sitting is currently an unincorporated area.
Yeah.
It is going to, hopefully, a year from now, be an incorporated city. But being here is different than if you and I had been chatting 5-6 years ago,
right?
And you were doing a Patriot Academy, you and I would have been sitting on the floor of the Texas House. Maybe would have been over in the Texas Senate. We've had this conversation while tourists are around taking pictures and doing other things. And that's kind of that was kind of the model for Patriot Academy.
Right.
You were kind of taking your cardboard box with all your materials shoved in, and you were kind of setting up camp for a few days in these places. But something strange happened.
Yeah.
Something strange happened to the world, and that was the whole COVID thing. And you guys were told you couldn't use the Capitol, and we all kind of half assented to that nonsense in that time. But then you were kicked out again.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. And to the Constitution City thing, first of all, just think of how beautiful this will be. People will come from miles around to study the Constitution in an Independence Hall replica in Constitution City, Texas. I mean, that's just poetic, Michael. Yeah. I know you love that. It's going to be amazing. So yes, but we kind of got forced into it. I mean, I kind of liked being able to be nimble and a little bit of a gypsy and just go a constitutional gypsy. Hey,
there's a lot of freedom in having your stuff in the back of your F-150 and just showing up.
Showing up and then getting to go home when it was over, right?
Yeah.
But we got to the point where we realized two things. Number one, having the students for 1 week at a time was great, but not enough. We wanted to have a place where we could have them for a year and really get them grounded. Number two, we kept running into opposition at the Texas Capitol of all places. And to the point that we were told, because of our biblical foundations, because, we just didn't let anybody and everybody come through our training, that we couldn't use the Capitol. And now, thankfully, when that happened, we were able to, get enough of our friends in the legislature and legal minds to put the pressure on, and we turned that around. But it was enough of a shot across the bow for me to say, that day could come where we're not allowed to use the Capitol at all, and we need to have our own place, not only for, the year-round training, but also to be able to do this, to do a legislative simulation, and it feel like we were in the Capitol. And so that's kind of what pushed us into it. And it was interesting. We got canceled, about a week before we were having our big event, and we asked, why? What's different about us? Because they said we were too political initially. And I said, wait a minute, Boy State, 4-H, all these programs talk about the exact same issues we're talking about. And the response was, well, but you're Bible-based. I said, okay, well,
So if you were Marx-based, it would be okay.
Yeah, if you're exactly. Or Islamic, maybe we'd probably be okay. Or if you're Muslim, it's okay, but if you're Christian, it's not. And so that was definitely, that planted the seed for us that we're going to have our own place.
And it felt like, in some ways, kind of an outsider, that it felt like these cats intended their because they didn't understand what y'all were doing every day of the year, all over the country. It felt like they were thinking, this will make him go away. This will kill it. If we take away the
carrot, kind of the shiny, getting to do it at the state capitol thing.
You'll just go away. And instead, like you said, this became the impetus for y'all building this facility with plans to do now even more.
Well, and what's really cool is now that we have our own Texas House Chamber, basically, and committee rooms upstairs, and we can do this year round, not only for those students I was talking about that are here for a year, but man, Michael, think about it. I can have 100 pastors in here going through a legislative simulation where they then go home and know better how to talk to their legislators, build coalitions, recruit candidates, smile on somebody in their church and say, you know what, I've been through that. I think you'd be good at this. We can do that on a weekly basis. We can bring in law enforcement and give them a chance to learn the Constitution and how the system works and what it is that they're defending on the front lines. We can have students like this, on an annual basis. So the vision now is expanded to being able to train citizens of all types, not just young people, people of all ages, on a year-round basis. And I kind of like that. And I don't have to live out of that suitcase so much,
you keep using this phrase, train. Right?
Yeah.
And there's that sense to which sometimes education, sometimes training, is, it's very self-inflating, right? That, I've read Plato, I've, whatever, and it doesn't mean much. Right. I think that's part of a distinction that you guys have. It's all very practically focused.
Yeah. I think part of it is just me. I graduated in that half of the class that made the top half possible. So I'm a little.
You were the foundation for the top half, right? Yeah.
So the esoteric stuff was always for me a little bit like, that's great, but what do I do with that? Like how do I actually make the truck run? And so part of it was that, but then also just the fact that boring, just sitting in lectures all day, I think is a turnoff to the young people, very young people we want to train. For those who just want to talk about it, they enjoy that. We want the doers, man. We want the people that are actually going to go be willing to scratch and claw in the trenches to win the cultural fights over time. And the ones that are just good at the esoteric conversations tend to be the ones that either get swallowed up by the swamp because they get so full of themselves, or they just wear out. They just can't handle how tough it is to win these kind of long-term, like this is a multi-generational fight. I mean, you and I have been in this fight for 25, 30 years. We're hopefully going to be in the fight for another 25 or 30 years. These kids that we're training, hopefully for 50 years, you got to have a certain level of practical stamina to be able to win those fights. And so I didn't want them to just come and I wanted them to do it. I want them to actually, when they're learning why limited government's important and where the boundaries ought to be, I wanted it to be in the debate, not just sitting there listening to me lecture. You know what I'm saying? It's that hands-on thing just cements it so much better than just a lecture. So I love the practical aspect of it, but I also think it's a better way to learn.
There's this sense to which when you guys are doing Patriot Academy, 1.0, I guess maybe we call it. You spend a week with these, with these kids here, and then you do another week with another set of kids over there, and then another week over there, and they got stuff out of it. I mean, you and I both run across these people who were in those little 1 week sessions, right? But yet, 1 week doesn't necessarily guarantee a lifetime of activity, of performance, of efficiency, of efficacy. Tell me about then now kind of the shift into Patriot Academy 2.0, where you're doing not a week but a year.
Yeah. I think the difference is they get interested and maybe they get a bent towards, okay, I'm going to at least pay attention a little bit more, and you can kind of scratch the surface and begin that. Here, you're literally pouring the concrete foundation that you can build upon. You're literally making it's solid, because and even a year may not be enough. You and I may be doing this again in 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, no, we actually need a full 3 or 4 years of them on the campus. Who knows where it will go, but I can already see the difference. I watched the graduation in here this summer of those first 12 that came through last year. Not a dry eye in the room to hear them talk. Our dean is a guy named Chris Dunham. He was a Zig Ziglar for 25 years. We met 30 years ago. Great in apologetics and history of the world, all this kind of stuff. And to watch them honor him and realize how important it had been to them to be able to, on a daily basis, get the advice and on a daily basis, get the application of, okay, here's what's going on in the world. Now, what are these principles that we're learning and how do we apply them to that? It's just a world of different. The depth that they walked out of here with after a year, it was night and day. I'm beginning to understand why the founders started so many universities, why they realized, you know what, we really have to teach the next generation in depth how to make this republic work.
Right. Okay, you talked a little bit about this. I want to give me a better sense of, right now for, a couple $100, I can hop onto a plane. I can fly to Philadelphia, get a very scary taxi, drive through a very scary part of town, and end up at Independence Hall.
Yeah.
And there I can see, I can kind of see the desk where Benjamin Rush and an ancestor of mine sat. I can see, although you can see those kind of things.
Yeah.
Not overly practical for most of us. So y'all are going to be recreating Independence Hall here in what will be Constitution City, Texas. Why is that important? Why is it important to reconstruct, have a replica of that kind of place here?
When we first started dreaming about this, it was the first thing you mentioned, the scary ride just to get to Independence Hall, right? I was like, I've done my Constitution class there in Independence Hall many times.
The city of brotherly love is not so loving.
Not so loving. Yeah. And I jokingly say to people, I just don't want to go to Philadelphia anymore and risk getting shot. I'd rather do it here and then go out to the range and do the shooting myself and some practice. But in reality, it became both that, literally a safety issue of Philadelphia just becoming a cesspool. But also, once you get inside Philadelphia, once you get inside Independence Hall now, your tour guide is a bearded lady. And I'm not exaggerating. The guy is literally wearing a dress with a beard and lipstick.
Yeah.
And when your kids walk away from that, and that's all they can talk about, instead of talking about Benjamin Rush or Benjamin Franklin or some of these other greats, we got a real problem. And so I part of it's, I thought we could reach more Texans if it was local and they could come here and do that. Another part of it is I really have reached the conclusion to save the Republic, we're going to have to rebuild those foundations and have some new places for people to go to still get that history, but also realize, okay, our fight going forward is to create Philadelphias all over the country.
Now, it's easy, I think, kind of externally to talk about, you're going to have this cool building over here, and you've got this kind of a stereotypical legislative chamber from which to act. Now, those are kind of fun. That kind of scratch a certain itch. But you guys also have a very impressive gun range. You do firearms training. Talk about that aspect of what y'all are doing.
Yeah, that started because, just personally, I went to you remember my days in the legislature. I was the God and Guns guy, passed all the Charlton Heston did an ad for me, all that good stuff. But I didn't carry. I didn't protect my family like I should have because I wasn't trained. And I went to a training 15 years ago, and it just totally changed my perspective on that. Realizing how important it is to do it. First of all, just recognizing there's 6 million violent crimes a year in America. With a lot of the policies of the last few years, it's gotten worse and worse. So just recognizing the need to be able to defend my family in those situations, but realizing that there's so many people out there that love to have the bumper sticker saying I'm a Second Amendment person or whatever, but they've never been trained either. The need was huge. The mass murder events that were happening across the country, realizing that the proximity of a sheepdog inside the building where that's happening is the determining factor of how many lives are lost. Because when you need police in seconds, they're minutes away. It's just the reality of the situation. And so we wanted to train as many people as possible to do that. And it actually turned into almost a ministry because we have people all the time that come here and train that have been through major trauma in their life. My favorite thing to see is a lady that comes here initially very nervous, in tears on the first day because of things that have happened in their life, and in tears on the last day because they've been able to empower themselves to be able to defend themselves. 55% of our students are women. I love seeing that empowerment of folks. So it's really a passion to have sheepdogs and to have people that can defend themselves. And I'll tell you, Michael, it's costly to do that. Is risky because people see that and they think crazy things. Oh, it's a right wing, whatever,
Right.
And that's one reason I am so adamant about law enforcement training here, so that people realize that we're not that. Right. So Secret Service trains here, sheriff's department, DPS, game wardens. I mean, they all use our ranges because it's so nice and all that, and because we want people to know that they're our friends and our partners. So there's been times where I've thought, maybe we should just get rid of all that so that we don't have to fight that image thing. But the Second Amendment's too important. The ability for people to defend themselves is too important. And so we deal with those public relations challenges because it's just that important to us.
Well, and I don't want to out anyone. I don't want to be that guy. But I will note that, coming in your parking lot today, I saw some kind of right-leaning, there we go, bumper stickers I would have expected. I also saw a gay pride bumper sticker. I saw a variety of other things, kind of maybe more leftist kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So while you're a guy right of center, a lot of our founding fathers would be considered very right of center.
Right.
Y'all are trying to do something a little different out here from a building good citizens rather than building, good young Republicans, whatever that may be.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, I remember probably 3 years ago, we were doing a training and a lesbian couple was going through the course with us. And one of them came up to me at the back of the range and said, listen, I know you're, not for gay marriage and all of these things, is it okay for us to be here? I was like, are you kidding me? You have every right to defend yourself in the moment just as much as I do, we want you to be trained. Absolutely have a right to be here. And honestly, we don't water down our teaching. I mean, when they go through our handgun class, they also go through our Constitution class in which I talk about things like that. And so, yeah, it's very interesting the folks that come that get that part of our training, but then also get exposed to all of the other things that we teach about what made the country great in the first place. So, yeah, I think we're probably very different than what people perceive. Once they look under the hood and they see a little bit more of what we're doing, it's a different ballgame.
I want to talk about. I'm going to go back to the young people.
Yeah.
Come through your program for a second. I think the unfair image that we have of kind of the Gen Zers is these are people addicted to their phones. They're lazy. Everything everyone over the age of 40 has always said about everyone under the age of 25.
Whatever that generation was.
Yeah, I've heard back in time ago. But, talk about the kind of young men and young women. What kind of response you're getting? Because you've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah.
What's the differences that you're seeing in this new generation of young people coming through as opposed to maybe when you started out?
I think there's more of a depth in the leaders, right? I think there is always the dumbing down of the education system and all those things, but these kids that you were watching earlier, I'm telling you, they're sharp, articulate, and they get it, and they want to restore those foundations. They know more about the right bricks to lay and the mortar to be used to rebuild the walls than, frankly, most of the people in our generation. So it is very encouraging to see that. And look, the elephant in the room, I mean, the Charlie Kirk effect is real. There is no question that it has galvanized a huge chunk of this generation. Kids are coming to us now that said, I'm changing my whole life trajectory and my plans because of what happened. I want to learn how to articulate what I believe. I want to learn how to be bold, and I want to learn how to answer these tough questions. Train me, teach me. So they're hungry. And I get chills thinking about that because it's a burden on us in our generation to pass that torch to them. I love it. I mean, it's what we're called to do, but man, the weight of that responsibility now is heavier than it's ever been. And I think one of the things that we try to instill in them and impress on our generation at the same time, Charlie Kirks don't happen by accident in terms of the depth that he had. He's at 17, 18, he was just like these kids that are in this room, but he became hungry and he found the people that would pour into him and teach him those things. And he was willing to study, voraciously to find that truth and then learn how to articulate it and then get good at that civil discourse. It didn't happen by accident. I mean, people are like, there'll never be another Charlie Kirk. I totally disagree with that. I think,
I think Charlie Kirk say, I hope not. I want someone better.
Absolutely. And he was always looking for the Elishas to pass that mantle to. And so I'm actually hopeful that there are literally the day after Charlie was assassinated, I wrote a quick article on, 1,000 Charlie Kirks. And so people kind of poked fun at that. It'll never be that. I'm like, no, absolutely there will be. This is what martyrdom does. It actually galvanizes and encourages and ignites a passion. One of my favorite guys in the founding era. You'll be familiar with him. Most people won't. Dr. Joseph Warren was the greatest orator of that.
Yep.
He would have been better known than Patrick Henry had the British not cut him down at 34 years old at the Battle of Bunker Hill. But he had this great speech on the anniversary of the Boston Massacre. He did 2 of those. There were 5 of them there at the Old South Meeting House. It's actually where the Boston Tea Party started, was at one of those anniversaries, writing a big rip-roaring speech, and everybody went down and threw the tea in the harbor and all that. But in 1775, just weeks before they cut him down, he gave that address, packed house. British are there threatening him. Be careful what you say. You know, not going to silence a guy like that. He was a little bit like us. And he said at the very end of the speech, he talked about patriots basically and said, when your work is done, the next generation will be, quote, fired by your example and then exemplify your virtues. That's what happened with Charlie Kirk. This generation is fired by his example. And now they are going down the Charlie Kirk discipleship videos, right? And they're emulating his virtues. So for us, man, that gives us a whole new generation that we get to pour into and teach these. They're more willing to listen now than at any time in the 30 years I've been doing this.
If folks are interested in the various things Patriot Academy does, how can they get involved? How can they either participate? How can they contribute? How can they get the young people they love in their lives involved?
PatriotAcademy.com. Go to the website. This does not happen easily. Lots of desks in here that need to be sponsored, and Independence Hall and cottages to be sponsored. So there's a lot of ways to help financially for sure. But also, give us a chance. Send one of your kiddos to one of our or come take one of our programs yourself. Go online and take one of our Constitution classes. Dig deep in there and look for the thing that you need to take up the mantle. And actually, and I say that to all ages, not just the kids that we train here. Every generation, everybody's got a voice. I think people thought that the assassination of Charlie was an attempt to silence his voice. It's actually an attempt to silence the voice of truth. And he was a vessel of that, as are every single one of us. And I don't care who you are or what your platform is. You've got people that listen to you. Maybe 5 people, maybe 5,000 people. Stand up and speak. But to do that, study so that you know what you're saying when you're countering what the left has been trying to do. Find out what the right bricks are and the right mortar, and then help us rebuild.
Outstanding. Rick Green, thanks for your time.
Always good to be with you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you for joining this edition of Real Texans.